Hey Pioneers, welcome to episode number 477. Today we're going to be talking about from burnout to balance, what a mature homestead really looks like. So pull up a chair or pop in your earbuds if you happen to be someone who listens to podcasts while you're doing dishes, driving, gardening, laundry. You get it. Or your favorite cup of tea if coffee is not your beverage of choice. But today I have a really special episode. A couple of weeks ago, I got to go in person to my best friends, Carolyn Thomas. Many of you know her from Homesteading family, but I got to go to their homestead in Idaho for the very first time. Carolyn's been over here to my homestead twice, but I finally got to go over there and visit Riverbend and had a blast. And while I was there, we thought it would be fun to record an episode for you guys. So you will see Carolyn and I, and we are talking about what a mature homestead really looks like. The lessons that we've learned from burnout to trying to achieve balance and how those shifts are shaping what we're focusing on in this particular season. From the projects that we're tackling next to the little habits that make a really big difference, you'll get a peek behind the scenes and practical tips that you can use to create more balance on your homestead. All right, let's get to it.
Well, I'm just so excited to be.
I know we're right
at your house together for the first. I know it feels so fun. I was
happy in the studio.
I know. Well, I was laughing because I'm like, if we ever moved to Idaho, like, and it would be in the Bonners Ferry area, if we ever relocated, I'm like, I could just like, it could be dangerous because we would be hanging out all the time. I'm like, either A, we would get a lot more done. Or B,
I don't think that would be the case. I'd be like, I'm so behind. You have to move back to Washington for like 3 weeks and let me catch up.
Yeah, I was giggling. I'm staying at an Airbnb and it's about 3 miles from Carolyn. So when I was driving here this morning, between where I'm staying and Carolyn's house, there is a lot for sale. And I was like, oh, if I lived there, like, and it was halfway between, I'm like, I would be here like, I could just walk.
You could walk right down.
Yeah, it was it was fun to daydream.
But we have enough extra zucchini. You could come harvest whatever you wanted.
I love it. I wouldn't have to worry about planting zucchini this year.
No, you wouldn't. You'd be safe. You'd be covered.
Amen. I would. Yeah, it was a fun daydream. But I was curious. I always think it's really fun. You and I have so much fun, but to bring other people into the conversation of within the realm of homesteading, you know, what we're kind of focused on and working on now, like kind of fine tuning, or is like your main focus. So like kind of like what's working now. And sometimes it's not always for me. It's might not necessarily what's working, but it's like what I'm fixing or fine tuning.
Right.
Could be what's working.
Yeah.
And chat about that.
Okay.
And then I'm excited to know future plans because I guess I'm just nosy. I like to know. I like to know what people are planning and doing because I get excited hearing people's plans. Like planning stage is one of my favorites.
Yeah. It is a fun stage. It's kind of like looking at seed catalogs in the middle of winter.
Yes.
Like you don't actually have to do the work. You can just dream.
Yes.
And you'd be like, oh, my garden's going to look like that this summer. I know it.
Yes. There will be no weeds.
So no weeds. It's not going to be too hot. No insects. It's going to be good.
Yeah. It's that daydream stage.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Fun. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got a lot of daydreams, so I'm happy to share them.
Good.
You know, for right now, though, I think that Josh and I have now been, doing some version of homesteading, maybe starting even back on like this, you know, second story apartment balcony type of homesteading for over 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there are these stages that you go through. And your first stage is like, I want to do all the projects. I have to do it all. I've got to learn all of these things. And I want to, you know, essentially we start trying to reproduce a grocery store in our pantry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really normal stage. I also don't think it's very sustainable. And so I think at this point, we're at this stage where we've kind of done different versions of like try and do it all and then pull back so we don't kill ourselves trying to do it, or, you know, just burn out and quit, to now trying to figure out like what are the things that really makes sense. What's that? We talk about that 80-20 rule often, like, 80% of what you do, no, 20% of what you do moves the needle 80%.
Correct. Yes.
And so it's like really identifying what are those 20% of things on the homestead that are like the game changers for life, the things where we get most of the food value from, or most of the money savings from the grocery store, or most of the enjoyment, really. And so this year, Josh and I have been taking, it's almost a joke in our house that we've been taking kind of a rest year. We have done fewer projects, but
it's almost like a hold year. Might be a better face. Like we're just kind of holding and doing our regular stuff, but it's not the new.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it. We're just managing all the things that are like coming at us instead of like trying to impose our big list on life too. But, with that, it's like we're really taking a look at what is it that we do that is really valuable. We're stopping fighting with the garden as much. I this has been really valuable. Like, stop trying to fight things that don't want to grow in where you live. Mm-hmm. Like, just stop working that hard. You don't need those tomatoes. You can go to the store and buy canned tomatoes if that's what you have to do. Go to Azure Standard, buy canned tomatoes. Stop fighting it. Tomatoes are our personal nemesis, although this year we're doing pretty well. I stopped fighting them, and all of a sudden we're growing them really well. And that's just
okay. I'm laughing because at the time of this recording, it is the last weekend in July.
Right.
And I come over and breakfast has tomatoes.
Fresh tomatoes.
Red, fully ripe tomatoes, mind you. And Carolyn's like, this is from the garden. I'm like, how early did you put them in your high tunnel or your greenhouse? She's like, no, these ones are just outside. And I'm like, mine aren't even blushing yet. Like, do tell. So that's the backstory there of my expression on the tomatoes.
I have to tell you my new experience though with elderberries, because I had this great elderberry like bush that I was pruning into this pretty elderberry tree in my cottage garden. And I have been babying this thing for like 4 years, and it has done almost nothing. It looks sad. It looks sickly. And it's just not happy. Plus, it's too close to the hops, and the hops keep grabbing it and trying to climb up it and strangle it and everything. So I was like, okay, that's it. I give up. This is not where I want an elderberry anyways. Lesson learned. And so this spring, I go out to the garden, and I kid you not, I hack it off. I'm like, I'm done with it. I give up. It looks dead anyways. I now have the biggest elderberry bush that is completely taking over my entire cottage garden by trying to kill the thing. So now, after years of trying to grow elderberries, my new advice is just try and kill it. If you just try and kill it, it will grow.
Okay,
very,
so
very
with
well.
elderberries, I learned this from my friend Seth Smith, who is a amazing beekeeper and botanist. And so 2 years ago, he told me that's how you prune elderberries. He goes,
just cut it to the ground.
Yeah, he said, if you want massive growth, he said, wait till the spring. In the spring, and he says, cut it down like a foot, and just all of it. And I tell you, the first time I did it, I'm like, I'm killing this. Like,
I just killed it.
I just killed it, and I did it on camera, and nothing's gonna come back. And I was like I was literally like the first cut. It was like, okay, no, I'm gonna do it. Oh my goodness, yes. Phenomenal. Okay. So now that's the way, and it's so much, I'm like, it is the easiest way to prune. Don't try this on regular fruit trees, but elderberries specifically.
How do you actually kill it if that was your goal? Because now I think you have to dig out the root. I think we're going to have to dig it out and move it, which is great. Yeah. We'll put it somewhere else. But, sometimes stopping the fight has had its benefit. But with all that, we took down the high tunnel. We're not growing anything in a high tunnel. We just said, if it has to grow in a high tunnel, it's not for us. It's not for our garden. And so we've just stopped fighting. But instead, we're looking at all the things that we're like, it doesn't matter what our summer's like, this thing grows.
It'll grow.
It's happy. It grows. And so instead, we're putting our energy into those things. And some of those things for us are like the brassicas do really well here. They don't mind if it gets cool. They don't mind if it gets a little warm. We don't get like crazy heat here. So they do really well, but we have a pest that we're surrounded in the lower areas around us by canola fields or rapeseed fields.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the flea beetles come off of those when they harvest those, and they actually come in waves. Like you can tell, like in our gardening community here, people will be like, okay, get ready. They're harvesting the fields. And you can actually, I mean, they're these little things. Who would think they go miles? I guess. I don't know.
That's
but they come like, first they're at this friend's house who's close to the field, and then they're here, and then they're fairly predictable. And so instead of putting all that energy into putting tomatoes and cucumbers in a hoop house and peppers, instead we're putting the energy into netting the brassicas to keep the flea beetles off. And so that is creating way less stress, way more production for us. And just, a much smoother experience where it's not like, oh, we got to just keep working and working and working, trying to baby these things that don't want to grow. So we're kind of doing that all the way across the board. Like we're looking at the livestock we're growing. I'm looking at the projects, the DIY projects I do around the house and go, does this really make a difference? Does this matter? Can I buy something that's of equal quality?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's cheaper. Sometimes it's cheaper to buy the ready-made thing that's of really good quality than it is to go through all the work, get all the good quality ingredients, and then make it yourself. And so you have to start asking yourself, like, if it's not saving me time and it's not saving me money, unless I absolutely love doing it and it brings me some sort of joy, why am I doing it? Why not support somebody local who's doing it and like let them be the producer because they love it or something like that?
Yeah.
So I think for me, that's kind of the big thing we're doing. And while it's not changing the overall size of the homestead, it's not changing anything. It's readjusting, it's reshuffling a little bit. And it's really helping us to reduce our work without reducing the production side and the harvest side, which is, I think, something that you have to settle into. And, the more I look at like historical homesteads, the more I think, well, they weren't trying to grow tomatoes in, North Idaho in the weather that we have and the resources we have either. It just wasn't practical. Maybe they had a little space off to the side, but that's not what they were depending on for their food.
No, it wasn't a staple crop.
It just wasn't, it couldn't be because nobody has that kind of time. And so in a lot of ways, I think the biggest thing that this is changing for us is actually our diet. Is just shifting the way we're eating instead of shifting the way we're growing. Yeah. Instead of fighting nature, we're like, going, well, let's eat some more root veggies. They do really well. Let's eat some more broccoli and fewer tomatoes, and we all have our things that we love and we're like, oh, but we really want spaghetti, and that's fine. We can add that in too, but it's not where a majority of our energy is going. So I think that's kind of the big thing that we've been discussing and working on and like making little shifts for around here. And, it's good. It's a good thing. I think we've realized how valuable the milk cows are. This year, we only have one cow in production, milk cow. And, I'm watching the cheese cave dwindle instead of fill up. And I'm like, oh, last year we had 2. And you can save a lot of money. It is a lot of work, but you can save a lot of money if you're going to really invest into like making yogurt and butter and cheeses and all of that. Plus, you just cannot get the quality you can make at home. Yeah. It's just so good for you. So anyways, it's taking an honest look at those things and saying, where do we want to put our energy? Yeah. And so we'll call it the maturing homestead, right? Like we're in the later phases of homesteading.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because mine and Clay's story are very similar. We've been married, this September will be 26 years, and we've been doing, to your point, some degree of homesteading the whole time of it. And I was just telling you on our way down, like we haven't done pigs in like almost 5 years now. And it's one of those things that each year we're like, okay, next spring, we're going to have XYZ in place in order to bring them back on.
Right.
And then that becomes the follow. And so I'm like, at this point, I don't even want to say next spring because it's almost like a joke now. Like next spring, we're doing pigs again. We really do want to do pigs again. It's just not been fitting in. But I think for me this year, some of the similar things. But what I've so my son Landon, he's moved out. I only have 2 kids. So Maddie, my daughter, is 16. And so she's the only one still at home now. And you take a teenage boy, and we all know how much they consume. And then you shift, and this little tiny teen.
You lose his appetite out of the house.
Yeah. But also I'm looking at, like, for us in the scenario with the milk cow, without having the pigs, right, to take the milk that we've skimmed and whatnot, like that's not going to another, I mean, we could feed it to the chickens, but again, like scale wise, we decided that we have a local raw milk farm. It's right across from my husband's work. I go there any time of day and just go and get milk. Yeah. And it's always phenomenal. It's like, it's spotless. It's clean. The cows are so well taken care of. And for a family of our size, with what it takes for a milk cow, it actually doesn't make financial sense for us with where we're at right now with the labor and the output for our size of family. It actually is cheaper for me to buy. Now I have a phenomenal raw milk source, right? It's in the glass bottles, like all the things, exactly, probably even to a higher quality than what I would do at home. Like but I'm like, it just doesn't make sense for us right now to have the dairy animal. But to the point is like weighing, I think both what we're getting at there is weighing the cost of doing it. And there's multiple things like your time and all of that. And it's going to look different for each family. But I think it's really important because I'm with you. There's been times where I've wanted to do it all. Yeah. And I haven't actually measured the cost, both financially, time, like all the things, like energy. At all. It's just been the point that we're doing it. Yeah. And that there is something about that does feel good.
Well, there is. And I think you want to learn the skills, right? I think a lot of us are looking at this and skills are getting lost, and we want to know how to take care of our families, which is great. We want to build those skills still, but it's like, but does that mean you have to live that way year to year?
Right. I agree.
So, yeah.
And the seasonality of it, I'm like, because, I'm like, you know what? When we have a bunch of grandkids and hopefully we all live close, like maybe that is the time we would bring a milk cow back in. Yeah. I don't know. But like kind of like that too. It's like, it's not no forever. And I think that helps my heart. Yeah. Of knowing it's not no forever. It's just no in this season of time, in this pocket.
Well, and I think that's so valuable, knowing like your homestead looks different than mine. Your needs are different than mine, and everybody's, you as a listener, yours is going to be different than either of ours. And, just because somebody else is doing something on their homestead doesn't mean that it's right for you to do. And I think you have to just really look at that and say, is this something that's bringing us joy, bringing us benefit? And I'm not just doing it because I feel like I should do it. In order to be a real homesteader, I have to have a XYZ, whatever it is, fill in the blank, milk cow, chickens, make my own soap, whatever it is that we feel like from seeing all these beautiful Pinterest images of like what a homestead looks like. That's just not true. And it's not realistic. And what it's going to do is it's going to burn you out before you even like get to where you're maturing in your homestead. So you just need to be really realistic about, what it is. I don't think I would do a milk cow if it was just Josh and I and one child. I agree with you. We would have to probably be selling the excess milk for that to even make any sense. Right. And, but if I had a dairy right next door and it was just the two of us plus a child, absolutely. I would be like, I'll let you do that work. I'll just enjoy the benefit. Thank you.
And I still get to come snuggle the baby calves, which is
that's the best part anyways.
it is very good. Yeah, it's been an interesting shift though, because even like you're talking about the gardening, I mean, kind of the same thing has been both workload. Do I want to keep doing this struggle? And then also just the shift in how many people we're feeding, what the eating habits look like, right? Which has also changed since my kids were little. And even the way Clay and I eat and what we like has definitely changed. I would, probably even in the past 10 years, there's been a shift too. Yeah. I have to say, though, I love vine ripened tomatoes at home. Like it is I don't even want to say guilty pleasure because there's no guilt in it. It is just, so for me, absolutely. I'm like, you know what? I am still growing some of the tomatoes, even though I had to seed start those babies inside and, but to your point, it's not our reliant crop. Right. Like I get what I get and I'm super happy for whatever we do have. And my main goal, I do still preserve a lot. Like I've kind of gotten down where we've got some varieties that work well for us. But my main goal is like, I just want to eat. I want to eat the fresh from it. I want to have like the Capri salad during summer with them and all of that. And then whatever excess, obviously I'll preserve up. I wouldn't let go to waste, but even just that little bit of a shift. And here's what's the interesting thing. We were talking about, sometimes the plants, like you just give up on them. Like you make it or you don't. Like we're done with the baby phase. My peppers, I used to always try to grow them in a high tunnel or a cold frame. And then I just put them all out in the garden. I have actually gotten a better crop.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was just like, they're self-pollinating predominantly. So I don't know if them being not in the high tunnel and they're out in the garden, so there's more wind to actually self-pollinate the blossom.
Yeah.
Or if it's something else.
I mean, who knows? Who knows? On some of these things, or it's just a really great year.
Right. The weather just all worked out. Overnight temps were warmer than normal. So soils. But it's been very interesting. I'm like, I spent how much time doing, this with the pepper plants, and then I just throw you in the main garden and you're just doing phenomenal. So, which is great. But yeah.
I think even just the mindset of it, it just removes the stress. Right. We didn't remove we still have the tomatoes. We just aren't stressed about them anymore. And we're just giving them a little less garden real estate. We're like, if you do it, great, because I'm with you. Nothing like those tomatoes for breakfast. Like, thank goodness. It's so good.
They're so good.
And I actually even put in some old heirloom varieties that I have not grown for years because they usually take too long for this. And I'm just like, let's try it again.
Let's see what happens.
Let's just see what happens. We're already eating them. We're already eating like the purple Cherokees are out there and the Brandywines. I'm like, what is this? I want to know what this is. That all of a sudden I give up on it and I'm like, well, let me try a few different things. Let me try the lazy way of doing
see what
it.
Happens.
And it's like, it's working really well. So I'm all for that. I like it if the lazy way works.
Yeah, same. And also being
hits my buttons.
Truly okay if it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that's the key for me. Like I can't just say, like, for my own self, I'm like, you have to actually be all right with it if it's not going to turn out.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's really a stress relief. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So that's interesting. We're kind of thinking along the same thoughts on some of those things, and just like, how do we make this long-term doable? You have all that momentum when you're a new homesteader. You're so excited. You want to see the changes. And you start seeing those changes and you start having more and more meals where like, hey, kids, everything on this plate is something that we grew right here, which is amazing. I can't say that ever gets old, but at some point it gets normal, right? It's like most of the meals we eat now, we look down and almost everything on the plate has been either produced here or, cooked here or something, right? We'll have our own sourdough bread. We're not growing wheat yet, but something like that. Yet.
I had a friend in our area. She posted on Instagram and just backyard garden, like wheat is grown a little bit. We're on the side of Western Washington, not a ton, but there is some winter wheat varieties that will do okay there. Predominantly most is on the east side because it's drier, but she showed like, it was impressive. And it was just a backyard garden. And she's just up for me. And I'm like, I said, did you plant that in fall? Like, was that winter grown and like the variety and all that? I was like, give me. So I'm like, so now I want to see how much she actually gets after she threshes it out, like how out her actual volume. I'm not committing to it yet, but I'm like, because if you're planting it, it'd be like garlic. You plant it in the fall and then you harvest in July. I'm like, really, you're not super involved with most of the growing. Okay. I'm trying to convince myself that I'm like, no, it's easy.
I know Josh and I at some point saw the numbers of what it takes to, like, it's not that much land for a family to produce enough wheat to make its own bread all the time. Yeah. And of course ours, because we have such a large family, we would need 4 times the amount of an average family. But still, like, if you can just do it as a garden project instead of thinking like, I need the field,
right? Well, it almost would be like a cover crop in all reality, really, right? Because you'd be doing your fallow period of the main growing Yeah. Anyways, we'll
You
see
could
if
put
I do
your
it this fall. I'm not
garden
sure.
in
Yeah.
that same row right afterwards. After you
Yes,
pulled it out.
exactly. After harvest time comes. So anyways, I'm
Wow.
contemplating it. We'll see. Which I guess led right into my point. Like, what are the
Move
the
over
future
tomatoes.
projects
The weeds
things?
coming in.
No, like what are the future things you're excited about or planning or kind of like next phases? I guess mine is coming sooner rather than later on possibly doing winter wheat. We'll see.
I like
know.
that. Okay, so for Josh and I, something that we've really been talking about is moving away from our dependence on feed stores.
Oh, yes.
Because of the grains. I mean, so kind of right back at the wheat side, that's what we think of as kind of like the go-to is grains, but also the hay, all of the things we bring in. We don't have hay ground. We might, in the 10 acres we just cleared, Josh was kind of like, we could potentially hay this once and still graze on it. Yeah. But one of the things we're really thinking about is continuing to produce more and more of our own feed. And I don't think it's going to look like hay. It's not going to look like grain, but what it can look like are good root crops, winter squashes, maybe some corn, some of those things. Have you guys looked into
doing the fodder trees?
No, what are the fodder? Oh, like for food crop trees, like the black locust and everything like that.
For the animal feed.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I think you'd have to do a lot
in order
to cover that many. I mean, you think about how much a cow. I'm sure it could augment their feed,
right?
But you'd have to have really big trees to be able to feed. Like we have, I don't know how many cows right now, but 10 cows or something.
Yeah,
and so, and then all the sheep and the goats and the pigs and everything else. I think that'd be interesting though. But they all add up together. It's like starting to put on, one of the things we are doing though, is like starting to put in nut trees everywhere because nuts are such a rich source of food for things like our breeding pigs that we take over winter.
Yes. And,
doing more, we've just realized one of the things we grow really well here are winter squashes.
Yeah.
We can just grow them by the, wheelbarrow full, no problem. And, so putting up more of those. And so again, like returning to the old methods, the peasants weren't out cutting hay for all of their animals for all winter long. It's too labor intensive. There's other ways to feed their animals, other ways to feed the chickens. They certainly weren't going to the feed store and grabbing 50-pound bags.
No, not for the poultry, you know? Yeah.
And so it's looking at that and what can we do?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting what we've come up with. And even one of the things we were just learning was about, if you see historically, they would cook animal feed. They would have these big pots built in, even to small cottages that were right over a fire. And they were often for cooking the animal feed. Animals, especially pigs, I think they can get double the amount of food value out of cooked food over raw food.
Okay, this is right. Because when we had pigs, which has been like 5 years now, what we would do is, because pigs can't eat raw potatoes. You should not feed them raw potatoes. Chickens either. But we would do a mixture of potatoes and apples, and same thing. We cook them like in a big pot, and then seal them up, and it would lightly ferment, like not full on alcohol, but it would lightly ferment. So we would just do it once a week.
Okay.
And it would make a big thing, and then we would supplement it still with some, because that was primarily carbs, to make sure they're still getting their other nutrients.
Right.
But it really took the feed so much further. And so we would just do it usually like on a Sunday or a Saturday on the weekend. And then we would just feed that with their food throughout the week. And then we just do it again. And then that way, if we had any apples specifically that were starting to turn, then we would cook them, and then they would just sit and be fine for the pigs. And we just put them in like 5-gallon buckets, put the lid on after they were cooked and cooled. And it worked really well, actually. So that's interesting, really though. But I didn't really know that.
So it takes half the food to fatten the animal to the same level is what that means, what that works out to, because they can get more caloric benefit out of everything.
Which makes sense.
Which makes a lot of sense. They can digest it better. They get more nutrients out of it.
Yeah.
And so, just looking around at like, what does that mean? That means putting in more trees, more fruit trees, so that we have that fruit that's on the ground. And, maybe in the fall, that means we're grazing the animals under those trees. So they're just naturally eating it, and we're not having to harvest, or we're just saying, hey,
go clean it
up. It's your job. And then putting them under the nut trees a little bit later, where they've already dropped all their nuts in late fall.
Yeah.
And like, how do we start creating systems that are a little bit more self-sustaining because, feed stores are just a modern thing. They are not required in order to feed animals well.
Yeah.
It just, it changes the discussion a little bit because you have to think about the food source before you think about whether or not you're getting it. Now we go, oh, we want a goat, so therefore if you're planning ahead and being wise, you're going to say, do we have housing for a goat, right?
Do we have fence that will keep this thing in?
Right. If you're like all the rest of us in reality, you bring the goat home and go, where are we going to put it?
What are we doing with this? Yeah.
Don't do that, by the way.
Especially with goats.
A bad idea. It does not work out well. But now you have to start asking yourself, not only do I have housing, but do I have feed? Can I support another animal in the it changes the discussion a little bit. And again, this is kind of like that maturing homestead. This is kind of advanced homesteading. This isn't what you ask yourself if you're brand new. If you're brand new and you're thinking about getting goats, go to the feed store and get goat feed. Like, don't stress yourself out like this. But at some point you do want to start saying, if I'm looking to be more resilient, if I'm looking to be more self-sustaining, I need to start asking these questions, because as soon as the feed store shuts down, all of a sudden your chickens aren't laying you those eggs that you feel like you're going to rely on in an emergency, and you just have to think it through at some point.
And that the chickens specifically is such an interesting conversation, because we have tested with the chickens, letting them just free range, because historically that is, a lot of what they did, right, was free ranging. Right. However, depending upon your predator pressure, and even in a more suburban environment, if your neighbors aren't okay with your chickens coming onto their property, because when they're free ranging, when they run out of food in their specific area, which if you're not supplementing, because we tried that. I tried not supplementing during summer, unless I just had some garden scraps or something, right? Yeah. But letting them just free range on the property. And they would they would go further and further out.
Yes. Yep.
Which means they got closer and closer to predator pressure on the peripheral of where our forests were. And if you don't have a really good livestock guardian, those different things, you do begin to, it's the risk benefit ratio, I feel like, because I've often heard a lot of people well, just let them free range, they'll be fine. Yes and no. I mean, historically was that way, yes, but it was also historically why they allowed them to go broody and kept roosters and hatched out so many more chickens every spring and summer, because they were losing so many more. And you would need more, because without the point of that perfect nutrition that we all know now, they need to have 16% protein, that's in commercial feeds. And you can do the same at home if you're willing to grow either those crops or to buy some of that to mix in, but you don't get the egg production. And so you have more chickens to get the same volume of eggs, even though you might not be feeding them, and you're going to lose a lot more. And so for us, the predator pressure became so much that I was like, this is stupid. I'm literally feeding the coyotes.
Yeah.
It's not making sense. So then we moved to the solar netting, and then I can move them around, and they still stay protected. And the solar netting is a large enough area that they get the bugs and the seed, all those things. But I feel like a lot of times I've heard well-meaning, but more inexperienced will say that advice. Yeah. They just don't know the implications of what that would actually be in a real life scenario.
There's also a big difference, I think. Like you're saying, it's kind of a sliding scale, right?
Yeah.
You can give them less feed and let them fend for themselves, but you end up with other issues. You're going to have lower production. They're going to range further. If you only have a couple chickens and you have a very large yard, that's going to work out pretty well, because they're going to be able to range over that whole area, and they're going to be able to, go find their bugs. They're going to like the bugs first because they like those high protein foods.
Yes.
And then they're going to scratch for everything else and augment as they find all your nice, juicy little seedlings that you don't want them to eat.
Yes. And ruin your herb garden. And
but it is kind of a sliding scale. And one of the things that we realize that you really have to be careful about if you want to do that, go as cheap as you can. And yes, I'm okay getting fewer eggs. You have to have enough room, because they need a lot of room to be able to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
And, they probably need a lot more room than you think.
Yeah.
So It can work, but yeah. And it can't work if there's snow covering the ground. I'll tell you that. You got to be ready to still to feed them in winter.
I would definitely say, weather, geographical location dependent for some of the methods is 100%. Well, and even with actually going back to, because that's something that I think once you get into a homesteading mindset, you can't help but think about. Yeah. Like, if I can't get this from the store, what's going to happen? And then mitigating it as best as you can without necessarily living in that real life scenario, or at least that's always my goal, is like, I would rather practice things when I don't have to do it that way.
Yeah, totally.
And figure it out and get it kind of dialed in as much as possible, but still knowing when you're actually in the scenario. I kind of feel like it's one of those things, it doesn't matter necessarily how much you practice. Yeah. When you're actually living it out in a real life scenario, there's going to be things that you didn't even think of. Yep. But at least you'll have the practice there that will help you weather it better. So I'm not saying like don't practice it, but also realizing till you're in it, I don't think any of us truly know.
No, I think you're right. I think that's, and that's why they say to do things like cut off all your power and try a weekend power outage and see how you do with your backups. Yeah. Because until you're actually living through it, you have, we just don't even think. You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And so it's really hard to go through those scenarios. And especially when you start involving other living creatures like livestock into the mix, like then you really don't know what's going to go on. No. So that's, yeah. If you want chaos, all you have to do is mix human and cows, is a saying that we often have here in the house. Just,
Yes. I mean,
people and cows. And if you really want chaos, throw dogs into the mix just for fun. And, you'll have a rodeo real fast.
So at the farm stay, our cattle, we have 30 head now, and they're down at the farm stay. And so we have guests who come down, and it's so funny because the cows are majestic to look at. Like, I still love looking at them, especially the Scottish Highland. I mean, I really do enjoy them. But I explain it to guests. I'm like, it is legitimately like having 1,000-pound toddlers.
Pretty much.
I mean, like they will go through things, and they, for the most part, are well-meaning, because I don't keep a cow that's mean. Like if there's a cow that's just seriously ornery, those genetics don't get to continue on with me.
Right. Move them out.
Yeah. But they're curious.
Yes.
Cows are so curious. I mean, I don't know if I've met a more curious animal. They are so anything you do out in the pasture, or they see you, they just want to know what's happening, regardless if they end up, knocking it over or tearing it down. They're just trying to check it out. So it's hard to stay mad at them, but oh my goodness, they can add elements to a day.
Yeah, they can definitely do that. I think anybody who keeps cows has cow stories about some day that did not go as planned. Yeah. We have a whole slew of sayings here that we throw at each other just to be like, when you're working with cows, fast is slow and slow is fast. You just have to like calm down, not have an agenda, and get it done at their pace. Otherwise you will be there all day. Yeah. All day long.
I have to say, one of the things that has been really interesting, because when we bought the farm stay pasture, it had been overgrazed for a very long time. And so we were on our third summer now, and it had a lot of thistle pressure, especially in one specific area of pasture, a lot. And so it was really been very interesting. And so we started, one is we rested a whole bunch of the pastures and just
gave it a year or two.
We took it like none on it, especially during the growing season. We're like, okay, we're just going to put them on these ones. So that in itself made a big difference. But then we just started doing the mob grazing. And it has been so interesting, because this is now our third summer, and it's dry pasture, meaning we don't irrigate at all. And we really don't hardly get any rain during July and August. I mean, maybe a quarter of an inch over 2 months. So it's this very small amount. But what's been interesting is seeing the difference that the mob grazing has, and without planting, like we didn't put in any new species of grass or perennials or anything like that, just mob grazing. It is amazing to see how much better it's growing. And like the standing, because right now it's pretty hot, so not a lot is growing. But because we've had these saved sections of pasture, like they're still eating, and it's staying green longer, because I'm assuming the root structure is so much deeper now, because it's been allowed, it hasn't been cut off every time it can actually put roots in. So anyways, even just that, I'm like, yes, I'm still having to put in hay, and we don't have our pastures to a point where we can get a cutting on them yet. But I'm like, I wonder if in like 5 years from now, if we'll be able, how many more months we'll be able to go in fall because we'll have standing forage.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing that on our little pasture right out here. We call it the house pasture because it's right here against the house. And we are intensively grazing that with multi-species and, running the chickens through it, which are just a game changer for, fixing your pastures. And when we first got here, that same, I think it's about 3 acres, that same 3 acres, we put a couple of sheep out on there. And I think it was maybe a couple weeks later, it was completely depleted. Like that's how bad that 3 acres and a couple of sheep, and it was gone. And now we're able to run usually 2 milk cows, about 5 sheep, multiple grazing pigs, and all the meat chickens through, and we're getting about 6 months off of it. And that is all they're eating. That is what
it's exciting, isn't it?
Same land.
Yeah,
like
I kind of geek out.
A huge upgrade, and it does make you excited because you're like, wow. You can really increase that fertility.
Yeah.
And that right there gets you that livestock feed further and further, less hay you have to put up, less grain you have to put up.
So I guess my point with that was, even if you're not able to necessarily start growing specific other feed sources for them, if you can just improve your pasture's fertility.
Definitely.
And that was without any outside inputs. Like we didn't bring in any fertilizer or any seed or anything like that. You can still make some significant bounds. So kind of doing what you can with where you've got right now, but then also kind of thinking towards the future. To your point, I did try growing, was that last year? I got a Homestead Heritage. It was supposed to be like a winter squash feed that they were supposed to grow like up to 20-pound squashes. I never got a single one. I mean, the plant grew, but it never did anything. It never did anything. I'm not going to name the variety or the seed company because I don't know that that's what the problem was. It could have just been the growing year. But I was so disappointed. I was like, well, I'm glad that was a test.
Yeah, right.
It was not
you weren't. I know.
Yeah.
I know. The thing that drives me crazy is when I hear people say something like, well, I have a survival pack of seeds in my closet. So if the world falls apart and I can't get food, I'm just going to garden. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I'll plant more food in my garden. Like every time I hear that, I'm like, I need a bigger garden to support all these people who aren't going to take care of themselves.
Who don't know.
Yeah, because they actually think that gardening is that simple, that it's like first year, I'm just going to feed my family everything they need. And that to me is like, oh, please don't do that. Don't make that your backup plan. At least augment with some freeze-dried food or something. I don't know. Get MRE kits if you're going to depend on that.
I agree.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Okay, so for the future, what is like kind of the next thing that you're really excited about for you guys to dive into or to start implementing or maybe refining, but kind of like what's that future horizon that you're like, oh, this is like, I can't wait for us to do this?
Yeah, well, I think that the feeding the animals more is kind of from the property is kind of a big one. But I think another thing that's happening for us here is we have kids turning into adults. And we now have kids who are turning into adults and getting married, and they and their spouses are saying, we want to be part of the homestead. And so figuring out what that looks like. I think there's a lot for all of us to figure out. We've all just committed to communicating really well together about like, hey, this isn't working for us, or this is, or like, we don't like this. And, making sure everybody is feeling, good about the entire scenario, because we certainly don't want to get into that and then have it like harm relationships. But I think with that as a groundwork, we're really excited about seeing where that goes and what people want to do together, because, there's just so much power in multiple families working together.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times that doesn't work out well in communities around you. And so we just built our own. We just was just like, oh, well, we need the kind of community we want around us. So we just had more kids. And so I have heard of people though, who like get together with a couple families and they're like their homestead buddies and they all share a milk cow and they all share, you know, I think communication again is at the heart of all of that and making sure that you are all very clear and communicating well and all very grace-giving people, because to work well with other human beings, you need a lot of grace.
Agreed.
For yourself and for them. But yeah, I think that's kind of a really exciting thing for us, and it's kind of an unknown in the future because we don't have it all worked out yet, and we're kind of looking to work it out together with them and be like, what does everybody want this to look like? Is it like, you know, one family takes the main garden, or, you know, is it that just we live close by so we can all support each other and get together on big harvest days, but everybody has their own garden? You know, it can look like many different things. It could also be a variety of things depending on who it is. You know, maybe one person's like, I really don't want to be involved in everything you're doing. I just want my own little garden, but I do want to be able to come down and like, you know, jump in on big canning days or big production days. So, you know, I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's really exciting to see them pick up the vision and to be like, we want to be part of this. And that's really gratifying because that's been a dream for Josh and I. So, What about you?
That's exciting. One of the things that I really want to work more on is implementing more perennials. I think as far as like the workload and then like once they're established, and you know, there's a lot that goes into that, making sure you've picked the right thing and it's in the right place. Like we were talking about with the elderberry, you know, that. But I really have come to appreciate perennials. And I'm like, ooh, I would like more perennials. And with the herbs, I have to say, I love my herbs. Like I love being able to use plants with our health. And having the skill set and understand like all of those things. But my herb gardens, like, oh, I love them because they are predominantly mostly perennial. There's a few things like Tulsi basil and stuff like that that all grow, holy basil, that all grow annually. But the majority is herb, and it's just so beautiful. Like, and I like just going out and like just touching the plants and all those things. And I'm like, I am really looking forward to developing the herbs and the apothecary in the garden.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm excited. And to learn more. I'm like, with herbs, like I don't care how long you've been an herbalist. I mean, kind of with homesteading, like there's really always more to learn, but especially with herbs. And so that's an area I really want to dive further in. I think especially too, like, so my son Landon, I anticipate will probably get married within the next few years. We'll leave that at that. Don't want to spill anything. And so I'm anticipating, you know, with that will come grandchildren and stuff. And so when I had my kids, I didn't know anything about herbs and I didn't use anything like that in my pregnancies or really with my baby infants. And I'm like, oh, I wish we all have those things, right? Like I know hindsight's 20/20. I wish I knew what I knew now then. And so I'm like, I really want to dive into that to be able to support. And then my daughter, she's 16, so it'll be a while, but I'm like, oh, I want that knowledge base and all the plants on hand for when that time comes. So very kind of, I mean, similar lines, like, what's the next step? Maybe in a lot of those things. Yeah, I agree with just like being out in the herb garden. I think it sounds so cliche to say it's healing for the soul, but it really is. It's like there's this thing that just is renewing in you when you just get to sit out with the plants and just I even enjoy watching. Looking from the window because one of my herb gardens is right outside the kitchen window. And so when I'm doing dishes, even just looking at the plants through the window, I'm not even out there, but it still triggers that, like, it just feels good. It just feels good. I just love it. So yeah. Good for you. That sounds like fun. I like that. Well, I agree. I want to do that too. Let's do that. Okay, good. Well, Carolyn she knows it now, but I already told Maddie, I said, we'll just be Carolyn's going to be on speed dial, and we'll be calling her because we were together with Ann of All Trades this spring before Ann delivered her baby, and Carolyn was dropping advice. She's probably going to kick me under the table right now, but Carolyn was dropping advice on like, oh, third trimester and when you're in labor. And I'm like, where were you when I was pregnant? And so I already told Maddie, I'm like, Carolyn is going to be your doula, even though she doesn't know it yet.
There we go. Yeah. I don't have, it's so funny. So many moms that I know who have large families are like, they go for a second career after their kids start getting older and they want to be a midwife and be involved in birth. I'm like, I've done that. No, thank you. Like, I do not have that interest. However, I do love supporting during the pregnancy, but I'm not very interested in being involved with birth things. But all
right. Well,
I feel like I've had to
call you with just questions, but
my life.
You don't have to be in the birthing room.
Good. That sounds like a deal. I'll be the ask me all the practical questions beforehand, because I do have a little bit of experience. I added up somewhere like how many years of my life I have spent. One time I did like how many years I've spent morning sick, how many years I've spent nursing. It's a significant amount of my life. Let me just say, I don't even remember the numbers now. I was like, I think I should forget that. I might feel depressed. So, but it's all been worth it. And it is fun to be able to support other people, especially in areas where you didn't feel like you had the support that you needed to go through it well.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Well, this has been fun. We might have to make this a more regular occasion.
You just have to drive over to Idaho a little more often. I'll come to Washington occasionally too.
Yeah. It's been fun.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Today's podcast episode is sponsored by Azure Standard. Azure Standard is the place that I turn to for the items that we are not producing yet here on our homestead or I can't get locally. So they can definitely be an answer to avoiding burnout, because not all of us, either from geographical location to acreage, can necessarily produce every single item. But we don't have to cut corners. You can get great deals and make sure that you are getting things grown and made ethically, regeneratively, and by companies who create products that we can be proud to have in our pantries and consuming for ourselves and our family. So from Azure Standard, that's where I stock all of our grains, rice, flours, sugars, maple syrup. I get pasta there for some of the pastas that we're not making ourselves here on the homestead, as well as things like lemon juice. So there's definitely items that we can't produce here, and that's whom I rely on. And one of the things I love about Azure Standard is I know that if they have a product, that they have done research into that company and they have the high standards that I do. So I can rely on them so that I don't have to do all of the additional research and stay on top of every single company and manufacturer. One of the other great things about Azure Standard is one of the things that can be really hard for homesteads to produce unless you have a large amount of livestock is fat. We don't have a dairy cow right now, so I don't have my own source for butter. We do get tallow from our beef cattle, and when we're raising pigs, we can get lard. But when it comes to butter, coconut oil, and olive oil, which are all really important ingredients, I rely on and trust on Azure Standard. Now, the coconut oil and the olive oil are great at room temperature, but butter, because butter is one of those things that you can't safely preserve at home via freeze drying or canning, but butter does fabulous in the deep freezer. So personally, I have a bin that I keep in our deep freezer, and I keep it stocked with about 20 pounds of butter. And then as we pull out and use our butter, then on my Azure order every month, I simply restock it with the amount that we've used that month so that I always have approximately 20 pounds of butter on hand. So check out azurestandard.com. Use coupon code Melissa15 to get 15% off your order of $100 or more as a first-time customer. I hope that you enjoyed this peek into what life on a mature homestead really looks like. And as we were sharing this episode and having this conversation, I really kept feeling the verse from Ecclesiastes I did it. I said it right. I always mispronounce it, even if I practice ahead of time. From Ecclesiastes chapter 3, really verse 1, but it's verse 1 all the way through 8 that all go together. And many of you are probably familiar with this verse. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. And that was verses 1 through 4. You can read through the rest of them. But when it comes to homesteading, we're very much aware of the real seasons, right? Of when we're thinking of winter, spring, summer, and fall. And of course, those are very applicable and those dictate a lot of things that we do in our homestead life. But just as looking at the beginning of your homestead journey versus the beginning, or as you get more advanced in your homesteading, and even as it changes, as maybe you have kids or your kids transition from being little to older, or you have kids that move out, maybe grandkids are coming, or you're empty nesting. All of these are seasons that we're in, and it's really important that we're honest about the season that we're in, and that we're seeking God's guidance on the things to set down, to pick up, or the things to simply hold on to. Because those do definitely change based upon the seasons. And there are times when I've been able to add a lot more to my plate. And then as time went on, some of those had to get set down, and maybe they're to be picked up again later, and maybe not. But it's really important that we pay attention to those seasons in every aspect and evaluate where we're at. So I hope that you got some inspiration from this, that you enjoyed it, and that there's tips that you can implement for your homestead as well. Remember, homesteading isn't about doing it all. It's about doing what matters most for you, your family, and your land. Blessings and mason jars for now, my friends.